The smell of rust and fear filled the air. It was a dark market, hidden under old space docks, where traders sold what no law would allow. Most came here for parts, weapons, slaves, or worse. The human man walked through the metal hallway slowly, his boots echoing on the floor. He wasn't here to buy, just to look. Maybe to remember something, maybe to forget something. But then he stopped. One cage stood out. Not because it was big, not because it was guarded. It was small, half in shadows, forgotten in the corner. Inside, a tiny alien girl sat, arms around her knees, body shaking slightly. Her skin was grayish-silver, with strange patterns along her arms, like faded war paint. Her long ears twitched at every noise, but she didn't look up. Not until he stepped closer. She looked up then, slowly, with eyes that were sharp, golden, and full of fear. Not the wild kind, but the quiet kind, like someone who had learned too early that hope was dangerous. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. The human knelt beside the cage, saying nothing at first. He just watched her, his heart slowly tightening inside his chest. "What's this one?" he asked a passing trader, voice low. The trader laughed. Tiny warrior type used in the blood wars. Bred for killing, can't be tamed, then wise, she in a cage. Too small now, too tired, probably broken. The trader shrugged. "We'll throw her out by end of cycle." The man looked back at her, and this time he reached out, not to grab, not to test her muscles, not to see if she would bite, just a simple touch, fingers through the bar, waiting for her to move. She didn't, at first. But then her small hand lifted. Shaking slightly, she touched his hand, just barely, like it was something forbidden, and the moment their skin met, she flinched hard, as if his kindness burned. Then she began to shake, not in fear of pain, but in confusion. And something worse, not knowing what kindness felt like. Tears filled her sharp golden eyes. But she wiped them quickly, looking away. Ashamed, the man felt a crack inside himself. She wasn't broken, not really. She was just treated like she didn't matter, and that he couldn't ignore. "I'll take her," he said suddenly, his voice firm. The trader stared at him like he was crazy. "Why?" "She's useless, not to me," he said, pulling out his id chip. He didn't even ask the price. He just paid. They unlocked the cage, but the girl didn't move. She thought it was a trick, a test, maybe another fight. So he crouched down, held out his hand again, this time with something warm in it, a small food bar. She looked at it, then at him, then took it with both hands and held it close. Her fingers moved so slowly, as if expecting it to disappear. But it didn't, and neither did he. He led her out of the auction. People staring, whispering, some laughed. A human buying a broken warrior. What for? Others looked away, uncomfortable with what they saw. A tiny alien, dirty and shaking, walking beside a man who looked at her like she was important, like she mattered. When they reached his ship, she paused at the ramp. She waited for the door to slam shut, for a chain, a command. But he just waved her inside. "No chains here," he said softly. Inside, he gave her food, water, a warm blanket, and silence. No questions, no orders, no shouting. She sat on the floor, the blanket wrapped tightly around her, her eyes never leaving him. She didn't speak, but her body said everything. She didn't trust him, not yet, but part of her wanted to. And that scared her more than anything, that night. While the man worked quietly on his tools, she fell asleep, curled like a child. Her hand still held the half-eaten food bar like a treasure. Her breathing was slow, calm. The shaking had stopped. Just a little, but it had stopped. He looked at her one more time before turning off the light. "I don't know who hurt you," he whispered, "but I'm not them." And with that, the ship drifted into the stars, carrying a warrior no one wanted. and a man who saw her differently, not as a fighter, not as a weapon, but as something fragile, and maybe something precious. Asterisk, the girl sat on the floor of the ship, wrapped in the blanket like it was armor. The corners of her eyes watched every movement the human made. He wasn't like the others, the traders, the warlords, the trainers. He didn't bark orders, didn't chain her to the wall, didn't touch her unless she allowed it. Still, she stayed alert, waiting for the trap to come, because there was always a trap. He had given her a room, not a cell. The bed had soft sheets, and the light was gentle. She didn't sleep in the bed, not yet. She curled up on the floor, close to the door. The way she had in battle camps, old habits took time to die. The man didn't force her to eat, but he left warm food at the edge of her door every morning. Not cold slop like the camps, but cooked meals, simple but kind. She stared at them for minutes each day before taking small bites, as if she thought someone would take it away if she moved too fast, and every day she expected him to demand something in return. He never did. Days passed like that, slow and strange. She watched him fix wires, adjust controls, and fly the ship with ease. He was strong not with weapons, but with silence, patience, and steady hands. When he spoke, it was never loud, just soft words, like, "You okay?" Or "We'll land soon," or "You don't owe me anything." Those words confused her the most. How could she not owe him? He bought her, paid credits, real ones, and expected nothing. That didn't make sense. Nothing in her life had ever come without a price. One evening, while the ship floated through deep space, he handed her a small datapad. "Maps," he said, "in case you want to know where we are." She didn't take it, just stared at it. "I can teach you how to read." "The stars," he added. "Only if you want." She blinked slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Why?" He looked at her like that question broke his heart. "You should know where you are, and where you can go," he said simply. "No one owns you." Her hands slowly reached out and took the pad, fingers trembling slightly. She didn't say, "Thank you," but she didn't need to. The way she held it close told him enough. Later that night, as he cooked something warm, she stood near the kitchen wall, silent, watching. He slid a bowl toward her, and for the first time, she didn't wait for him to leave. She sat down at the table across from him and began to eat. Her hands shook slightly with each spoonful, but she didn't stop. He didn't speak, just ate beside her like it was normal, like she was just another person. She didn't understand how he made her feel like that, like she belonged here, even if only for a moment, like she was more than her training, more than her scars, more than a tiny warrior raised to kill and obey. One night, she woke up from a nightmare, her body wet with sweat. She had dreamed of the blood pits, of screams, and fire and failure. She stepped into the hallway and found him awake, sitting with a mug of something warm. He didn't ask what happened. He just slid the mug toward her and said, "Couldn't sleep either." She sat beside him without a word, both of them staring at the stars outside the window. After a long silence, she whispered, "I was trained to kill before I was strong enough to lift a blade." He didn't respond right away, but when he did, his voice was soft. "I believe you. I was told I'd be thrown out if I cried. I believe that too. I'm not useful anymore," she said, her voice colder now, like a weapon. Being drawn, he looked at her, steady and calm. "You're alive," he said. "That's useful enough." She didn't reply, but her chest felt tight again, like something was waking up inside her, something she had buried long ago. Hope, maybe? Or something worse, the desire to be seen. Later that week, the ship landed on a small, quiet trade moon. He told her she could stay on the ship, but she followed him anyway, eyes wide, body tense, ready for a fight that didn't come. At the market, people stared, but no one dared speak. A human with a tiny alien warrior beside him. Strange, Yes, but no one dared laugh. She watched how he moved. How he helped a tired vendor lift a crate. How he bought fruit and gave extra credits without a word. How he gave respect but demanded none. She followed closely, absorbing it all. That night, as they flew away, she stood behind his chair, her voice small but firm. "Why do you treat me like I matter?" He looked up at her and answered, "Because you do." She didn't reply, but for the first time, she smiled, just a little. And the stars outside didn't look so cold anymore. For days, she had stayed quiet. She ate, drank, watched, and sometimes followed, but she never spoke. Not one word. The human didn't push her, didn't ask why. He simply let her be, as if silence was her right. But inside her, the silence was a prison. Every sound reminded her of the past metal doors slamming. Orders shouted, cries from others like her. Her voice had once been used only to scream in battle or beg for mercy. And warriors weren't supposed to beg, so she had learned to keep quiet, to keep still, to keep everything locked away. One morning, the ship floated in open space near a quiet red nebula. The view outside was beautiful calm. Warm like a fire in the sky, the human was fixing a small drone, his sleeves rolled up. Grease on his hands, she stood a few feet away, holding a tool she didn't recognize. Watching him work, he didn't ask her to help. But he didn't stop. Her either, so slowly, she knelt beside him, placed the tool in front of him, and waited. He looked at it, then at her, and gave a soft smile. "Good choice," he said, using it right away. She blinked. Not sure if he meant it or was just being kind, but still her chest felt warm. Even if her face stayed blank, he kept working, humming something under his breath. It wasn't a war song, not a command rhythm, just a simple tune. She tilted her head, listening. It was the kind of sound no one had ever made around her careless. Soft, human. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The words sat like stones in her throat, too heavy to lift, but she tried again. And this time, a whisper came out. "Why?" The human paused, looked up slowly, not with surprise, but with calm eyes. He didn't rush her, didn't push her. He just waited. Like he'd known this moment would come, she stared at the drone, not at him, and spoke again. "Why did you touch me like I was precious?" Her voice cracked on the last word. It was a strange word to her, one she had heard only in whispers between other species. Never toward her kind. Her kind was used, trained, shaped into blades, not held gently. The human leaned back, wiped his hands with a cloth, and looked at her with quiet honesty. "Because that's what I saw." He said, "Not a weapon, not a fighter." He pointed gently at her chest. "But someone who deserves to be held with care." She shook her head slowly, her hands curling into fists. "I don't understand. I don't know how to be that." He nodded, like he understood completely. "You don't have to understand it today," he said. "You just have to stay." Silence returned, but it wasn't heavy anymore. She stayed there beside him, breathing carefully, heart pounding from speaking her first full sentence. And somehow, that made her feel like she had survived something even bigger than the battles. That night, she stood outside his door, not knocking, just standing. He noticed her. Shadow opened the door slightly. She looked up at him, golden eyes shining but unsure. "Can I sit here?" she asked. He stepped aside, letting her enter the room. She didn't want anything, no food, no comfort, no questions. She just sat in the corner, wrapped in her blanket, and watched the stars from his window. He didn't speak either, didn't try to fill the air. He simply sat at his desk and let her be there, and in that quiet space. She felt safe, not as a soldier, not as a captive, but as something else, something softer. Something she didn't know how to name yet. She whispered again after some time. Her voice smaller now. "My name was Fireblade." He looked at her. The name, sharp and cold in the warm room, was He asked gently. She nodded. They gave it to me when I was 8, she said. After I killed a commander who touched me, he didn't flinch, didn't judge. Instead, he asked something simple. Do you want a new name? She froze. Eyes wide. A name, not a code, not a label, a real name. I don't know how to choose one, she admitted. He nodded again, thinking. Then I'll call you something until you're ready, he said. How about Nira? She repeated it softly. Nira. It didn't taste like blood, like war, like pain. It felt light, like air. She whispered it again to herself. And when she looked up, her face finally held something new. Not fear, not anger, but a tiny spark of something close to hope. For the first time, she felt like a person, not a project, not a weapon. Just Nira, and she didn't shake when he looked at her. She only whispered, thank you. The ship drifted slowly through calm space. Outside the window, a pale star lit the dark with soft, golden light. Inside, it was quiet. Just the low hum of the engines and the clicking of tools. The girl Nira, us, beside the human as he worked on a damaged sensor plate. Her hands moved more steadily now, helping him screw parts into place. She didn't flinch at small noises anymore. She didn't sleep by the door either. Each day felt like a slow lesson in peace. She wasn't used to peace. It felt like waiting before a storm. Like something sharp was hiding under the soft edges. He never asked her to talk. But that night, when they sat eating soup at the table, she looked up and said softly, Do you want to know what they did to us? He paused, spoon in midair, and set it down gently. His eyes met hers, serious and calm. Only if you want to tell me, he said. Nira nodded once. Like she had finally made a choice inside herself. Her voice was flat, but her hands trembled. Slightly, so he sat quietly, listening, not interrupting, not judging. They took us when we were small, she began, barely old enough to speak, but strong enough to run. Her fingers moved across the table like she was drawing memories. In the air. We were given numbers, not names. They shaved our heads, painted us in training marks, and made us fight each other for food. Her voice cracked on that last word, and she looked away. I wasn't the strongest. She whispered, but I was fast. He nodded slowly, letting her continue in her own time. I watched my sister lose her eye because she didn't kill fast enough. She said she cried for 3 days. Then they took her away, near us. Eyes stared past him now, like seeing ghosts. They said crying was weakness. She added, so I stopped. He didn't speak. Didn't try to comfort her with words. He just stayed there, steady as stone. Letting her voice be enough. Later. They gave me a blade and told me to kill someone in the next room. I did it, she said simply. I didn't know their name. Her hands clenched into fists. I was 8. The silence in the room felt heavy now, but not empty. It was the kind of silence that listens, that holds the weight without breaking it. I was good at it, Nira added. As if confessing a crime, they called me Fireblade, made me lead small units. She laughed bitterly, but it sounded more like a sob. I killed 4 people who never saw me as anything but a tool. The man finally spoke, gently, but I see you. She looked up sharply, like those words hit deeper than a blade. I see Nira, he said again, not Fireblade. She stared at him for a long moment, and something in her eyes shifted, slowly. She stood and walked to the window, placing a hand on the glass. Outside, stars blinked like tiny, distant hopes. She whispered, I don't know how to be anything else. You don't have to know yet, he said behind her. You just have to try. That night, he showed her how to use a basic scanner not as a weapon, but as a tool. She held it awkwardly at first, unsure how to grip something that didn't kill, but he guided her gently, never touching her unless she allowed it. Their fingers brushed once, and she didn't shake this time. She looked at him, surprised by her own calm. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. He looked down, thinking for a moment. "Because someone should have been kind to you long ago?" he said. "Because no one else was." That answer sat deep inside her like warmth in winter. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, but she didn't look away from him either. Not this time. Later, in her room, she sat on the bed for the first time. It felt strange, soft, safe, undeserved. She curled up under the blanket and held the datapad he gave her. Her fingers typed a name into the star map. Nira, then, under it, she wrote, "Not Fireblade." She stared at it for a long while. Before pressing save, it wasn't much. Just a word, but to her, it felt like a piece of herself was no longer broken. The ship kept drifting through the stars, and for the first time, she felt like maybe she wasn't drifting anymore. Maybe she was finally starting to land, not in a place, but in herself. The days had become softer. Nira now ate at the table, learned ship controls, and asked quiet questions. She laughed sometimes, not loudly, but softly, like someone testing a fragile sound. The human had learned to smile at those small moments, each one a sign that she was healing, but healing was never a straight path. That morning, the ship passed through a field of old space wreckage. He let her take the pilot's seat, her hands resting nervously on the controls. He sat beside her, calm and close, giving gentle instructions. "Turn to starboard," he said. "Just a little," she did, carefully. Watching every movement of the screen, the ship glided through the debris like a shadow, untouched and silent, when they cleared the field. She turned toward him, proud. "I didn't crash," she whispered, smiling. "No," he said, smiling back. "You flew like a pro." "Then it happened by accident?" He reached to pat her shoulder, just a quick gesture of praise. But the moment his hand touched her, Nira froze. Her smile vanished. Her eyes went wide, and her whole body locked. She gasped, stumbled backward, and hit the floor, hands raised to defend herself. The human stepped back instantly. Hands up, voice gentle. "I'm sorry, Nira." Forgot she was shaking again, her breath quick and shallow. "I didn't mean to," but she wasn't hearing him. Not fully. Her mind had returned to another time, another place. A hand on her shoulder had never meant praise before. It had meant pain, punishment, chains. Her training had burned those lessons deep inside her. She sat on the floor, trembling. Like she had the day he first saw her in the cage. He didn't touch her again, didn't come close. He just sat a few feet away, cross-legged, calm. "I shouldn't have touched you," he said quietly. "That was my mistake." Nira slowly looked up, her eyes filled with fear and shame. "I thought I was better," she whispered. "I thought I wasn't broken anymore." "You're not broken," he said firmly. "You've just been hurt, deeply, again and again." She hugged her knees, voice barely audible. "It still lives inside me." "The fear, I know," he replied. "That's why I'll never touch you without asking again." They sat in silence for a long time, no sounds, just the steady hum of the ship around them. Eventually, she stood slowly and walked back to her room. She didn't shut the door. She left it open. That was enough, for now. Later that evening, she stood outside his door again. He looked up, surprised but silent. She stepped inside, holding something wrapped in cloth. I fixed this," she said, unwrapping the old scanner he had given her. The parts were neatly aligned, wires replaced with care. "I broke it last week." "I didn't tell you," she added, looking down. "I wasn't ready to admit mistakes." He took the scanner gently, inspected it, then nodded. "You did good work." She looked up, eyes searching his face. "You're not angry?" He shook his head. "Mistakes are how we learn." She sat down across from him, her hands resting on the table. "Why didn't you yell at me?" she asked, because yelling never taught anyone how to be better. Her lips moved like she wanted to smile, but couldn't quite do it. I'm still learning how to live like this. She whispered. I know, he said gently, and I'll wait as long as it takes. The next morning, something small changed. She stepped into the kitchen and poured 2 mugs of warm tea, one for herself, one for him. When he entered, she slid his cup forward without a word. He smiled, accepting it. Thank you, he said. She nodded. For everything. That day, she helped repair a broken thruster under the ship. It was greasy, tight, and loud, but she didn't panic, even when sparks flew near her face, even when her arm brushed his. She didn't flinch. Instead, she asked, "Is this the right part?" He nodded. Perfect. Later, as the ship flew once more, Nira stood behind the pilot's chair. Her voice was stronger now. I'm not used to kindness, she said, but I think I want to be. He looked back at her, calm as always. You don't have to rush, he replied, but I'll be here while you try. And that night, when she sat beside him in the quiet again, she leaned her head gently against his arm. Just for a moment, just long enough to feel safe. He didn't move, didn't speak, just let her be, and she didn't shake this time. Not even a little. Asterisk, the days had grown peaceful. The stars no longer looked cold to Nira. Each light outside the ship felt like a place she could choose to go, not run from. She no longer curled up near doorways. She slept on her bed, fixed, broken. Circuits made meals beside the human. She was learning, little by little, how to live. But peace never stayed forever. One message changed everything. An old scan beacon picked up a patrol signal, 3 ships flying under the crest of the Drokar Empire. The same empire that had trained her, owned her, used her. Nira stared at the screen, her fingers tightening on the console. They're heading straight for us, she said quietly. The human nodded. Already changing course. We'll try to lose them. But the Drokari weren't coming by chance. They had tracked their signal, and they had a reason. The hail came first, to crackling voice in a language only Nira fully understood. Return our property, the voice said. Surrender the traitor. The human didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at her. Eyes calm. It's your choice, he said softly. Do you want to run or face them? Nira stared at the screen, then at her hands. They didn't shake, not this time. I'm not property, she said. Standing tall, let them come. Minutes later, the Drokari ships docked. Armed soldiers in heavy black armor marched through the loading bay. They didn't speak to the human, didn't ask questions. They moved toward him like he was nothing, like they expected Nira to obey and step aside. But she didn't. She stepped in front of him, eyes burning like a quiet fire. No one touches him, she said. Voice clear and steady, the lead soldier laughed. You think protecting a human will save you, Fireblade? She didn't blink. My name is Nira. The human stayed back, watching, ready. But he didn't interfere. He knew she needed to do this herself. One of the soldiers stepped forward. Weapon raised. You were born to kill, he growled. Then be glad I'm not doing that now, Nira replied, pulling a short blade from her belt. Not to kill, but to defend. Her stance was calm, not trembling, not scared. Ready? A short fight broke out in the bay. Fast, sharp, but not bloody. Nira moved like the wind, dodging, blocking, disabling without going too far. She didn't kill a single one of them. She knocked weapons out of hands, broke armor joints, and brought silence to the chaos. When it was over, the soldiers lay on the ground, stunned, confused, disarmed. Nira stood in the center, breathing heavy, her blade still clean. You were never my masters, she said, and I was never yours. She tossed their crest pin on the floor and stepped back beside the human. He looked at her with quiet pride. You okay? he asked. She nodded. Yes, I am. They sent the soldiers back to their ships. No threats, no final warnings, just silence. The Dracari didn't expect mercy, and Nira didn't explain it. That night, after repairs and cleanup, they sat outside the ship under a quiet moon on a nearby station. She held a small cup of warm tea, staring at the stars. I didn't kill them, she said softly. I know, the human replied. I could have, I know, but I didn't. Because you've changed. She looked down at her. Hands small, scarred, but steady. They trained me to be a weapon. She whispered. You chose to be more, he answered. A quiet moment passed between them. Then she said, I used to think being strong meant never being soft. But today, I was strong. And I was gentle. The human smiled. That's the kind of strength they'll never understand. Later, she stood outside her room, breathing slowly. She looked at the mirror and saw herself not a fighter, not a project, just Nira. Not perfect, not whole, but free. And that night, for the first time, she didn't fall asleep wondering when she would have to run again. She knew she had someone who would stand beside her. And she knew she would stand for him too, because real strength wasn't in how many enemies she could cut down. It was in knowing when to protect someone who once touched her like she mattered, and still did. The stars drifted slowly past the window. The ship moved quietly through open space. No more alarms, no more pursuers. Inside, the lights were warm, the air still, and the silence gentle. Not the kind of silence Nira had once feared, but the kind that made her feel safe, like home. The human sat at the console. Running scans of the next system, Nira stood beside him, her arms crossed, her golden eyes watching the map. There's a colony on the next planet, he said, mostly humans, small population. Is it safe? She asked. He looked at her, calm as always, safer than most places. She didn't answer right away, just looked at the blinking lights on the screen. A part of her wanted to explore it. To walk through a city without armor, to see the sky with no guns in it, but another part was afraid. Not of danger, but of freedom, because she didn't know what came next that evening. They landed near the edge of the colony. The buildings were simple, low, built into the stone hills. Children ran through the dusty paths, laughing vendors sold fruit, tools and blankets in the market square. No soldiers, no scanners, no chains. Nira wore simple clothes, now no armor. No weapons, just soft fabric that didn't rub her skin raw. People stared at her, yes, but not with fear. Some were curious, some cautious, but none of them looked at her like she was a thing. Just someone different. She walked close to the human, but not because she was afraid. It was just easier with him there. He didn't speak much, didn't tell her what to do. He simply walked at her pace. Like always, a little girl with pale hair ran past and nearly bumped into Nira. The girl froze, eyes wide. Nira stepped back, unsure what to do, but the girl just smiled, waved, and ran off again. Nira blinked, stunned. She wasn't scared of me, she whispered. No, the human said. Why would she be? They reached a quiet bench at the edge of the market. Sat down with fruit juice and bread. Nira bit into the bread slowly, her eyes scanning the people around her. She had never been in a place like this. No orders, no fear. She wasn't sure how to act, so she just breathed. The human looked at her and asked gently, "Do you want to stay here?" She looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you want to live here? You could start fresh. You'd leave me here?" she asked, voice small. He shook his head. "No," he said. "I'd never leave you, not unless you wanted me to. Then why ask?" "Because the choice should be yours," he said softly, "not mine." She stared at him, her chest tight again. No one had ever let her choose anything. Not her name, not her path, not even her meals. And now, this man, this strange, quiet human was offering her freedom, real freedom. It scared her more than battle. "I don't want to stay without you," she said finally. He smiled. "Then I guess we keep going." She looked out at the people again, then back at the ship. Far behind them, "Can we come back someday?" "Whenever you want," he said. "This world isn't going anywhere." That night, on the ship, Neera sat on the floor of her room. She opened the datapad and typed something new. A list not of enemies or missions, but of dreams. Learn to fix every part of the ship, walk on a beach, grow something from a seed, make someone laugh, visit a planet with snow, find someone else like me and help them. She stared at the last line for a long time. That one felt the most important. Later, she walked into the control room where he was reading. "I have a question," she said. He looked up. "Go on. If I wasn't small or scared or broken, would you still have helped me?" He closed the book, stood, and walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but he looked her straight in the eyes. "Yes," he said, "because you were never broken to me. And if I leave someday," she asked, voice almost shaking. "I'll miss you," he replied, "but I'll be proud of you." She nodded, slowly. Like that answer meant more than he could know. Then, in a soft voice, she said, "I want to stay for now. With you," and he smiled. "Then we keep flying," as the stars filled the window once again. Neera leaned back in the chair beside him. Not as a soldier, not as a rescued thing, but as herself. She had walked through pain, through silence, through fear, and now, she was walking toward something new. Not because someone told her to, but because she chose it. And maybe, just maybe, that was what real freedom looked like.